Dragon Ball Z by Akira Toriyama is considered by many the epitome of anime. When we think of the word anime, mainstream media and nostalgia teleports Dragon Ball Z to mind. So why am I talking about it? Simple, because a collection of international fans from Latin American countries don't just love Dragon Ball Z and all its Super Saiyan glory, they like one specific game that has created its own sub-community of tournament players, modders, and game designers. Now the game, Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi, may have been the first game of a trilogy of 3D arena fighting games. The one that probably harbors and represents these fans from Facebook groups and YouTube channels the most is its final iteration, Dragon Ball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 3, or Dragon Ball Z Sparking Meteor. But before we can explain the modding scene and international fans, let's go over a brief history lesson on why and how Dragon Ball Z, a Japanese manga/anime, became a prominent franchise in countries like Mexico and Peru. I would like to thank in advance Sudium, who has a great video that discusses Latin America and its hardcore relationship with the Dragon Ball Z series, and how it has an incredible following that includes bootleg toys, murals, and stores named after the show. Please be sure to check out the video for a more detailed understanding of all this. Most of my information originated from his findings, but I'll do my best to work off the info and explain why Dragon Ball Z is such a sacred cultural milestone in Hispanic culture overall in about 60 seconds. 1, 2, 3, go. Dragon Ball Z aired a Spanish dub in the mid-90s in most Spanish-speaking countries. Its airtime and content as both a fighting action drama made it accessible to both children and adults, which eventually spread its influence and popularity at schoolyards, the streets, and likely everywhere else. The fact that Dragon Ball Z continues to air in some parts of these countries today speaks volumes to the show's legacy, but it did not end there. The internet age of the early 2000s would eventually lead to rumors and fake fan-made images of the continuation of Dragon Ball Z. This global interest would eventually be answered when 2015 brought forward Dragon Ball Super, now with the internet having a more active cultural presence with memes, trolling, and Reddit. Latin American fans were more in tune with other fans from the rest of the world, which only put the presence of the series in their home countries in an even greater scale.
An example of this is when Mexico's government touted the final episode of Super as a special event that would be screened among crowds of viewers all over the country, which caught the attention of Japan's government, attempting to stop the events from occurring. Of course, this did not stop hundreds of citizens in Mexico from watching the final battle between Goku and Jiren in plazas around the country. Thus, Dragon Ball Z and its multimedia franchise continues to be a revered piece of media from countries like Mexico and Brazil that can only be seen to be believed. Now, after solidifying the context of DBZ conquering most Latin American countries, let's get back to Tenkaichi 3. As the third and final game released on PS2 and Wii in 2007, each installment was developed by Spike and published by Namco Bandai Games. But what separated Tenkaichi 3 from the rest was how it boasted more than 160 characters, which includes their regular and transformed states, such as the Super Saiyan forms. As of the past decade, this is still considered the largest roster in any Dragon Ball Z game at release, as well as being considered one of the largest character rosters for a fighting game in general. But that's not all, as multiple challenge arenas, tournament modes, campaigns, multiplayer setups, and stat customization made it a toy box of fighting scenarios that combined a simple but complex fighting system of combos, counters, and special moves.
I started playing the game when I was 8 years old. In short, I saw the game and said, I need to try this game. I played it for a while, and I finished the game in less than 5 days. It was very addicting.
Since the release of Tenkaichi 1, I believe it came out in 2004 if I'm not mistaken, I knew this game series since I was in high school, and the time that I had seen, it attracted me. It was love at first sight.
Despite critical praise and a promising future, the last game to hold the Budokai Tenkaichi name was a spin-off series dubbed Tenkaichi Tag Team exclusively for the PSP in 2010. I think one thing that is hard not to notice looking from the credits is that a lot of the original voice actors from the show were brought in to voice their characters, as well as how the entire beginning and end of Dragon Ball Z are all properly represented, which includes having characters and references to the original Dragon Ball, as well as Dragon Ball GT. And obviously, had Super released in the early 2000s, one can only assume that series would have been represented as well. Essentially a love letter to the entire anime, it's not hard to put together how Budokai Tenkaichi 3 became the gateway of Latin American fans and their own love of this game. One of the main things keeping this game alive for many of these fans is through the use and implementation of modifications or mods. In this case, a game with already close to over 100 characters to choose and fight with left these fans wanting more. Why not add characters from Dragon Ball Super? Why not add characters from other animes? Why not just go crazy with characters that would only exist in your wildest dreams? For these modders, anything was possible, and it shows. It is a fact that BT3 is one of the more acclaimed Dragon Ball games to date. I think that its fame, plus the community, made it possible for many people to unite and launch mods for the game, all created by themselves. But how does one add mods to a PS2 or Wii version of Budokai Tenkaichi 3? After reviewing several tutorials, a quick breakdown involves downloading the mod of your choosing from a website or link provided by the creators. Using specific software tools and extraction of the files found on the game disk, the mod is essentially transferred onto the disk, which means data will be added onto the disk, which can then be played. Maybe the fans can do a better job of explaining it? You have lots of options. The easiest is to look for an ISO of the game with the mods already installed in the game, or find the mods one by one and build your own ISO, a procedure I am not familiar with. To have all the characters, you must have a save data with all the characters unlocked from the original US version of the game. To play it on the PC, the recommendation is to have a gaming PC so that it runs 60 FPS stable. But there are also some tutorials where with certain settings you can play the game on low performance PC. I forgot that you will need to use the PS2 emulator, although there are also versions for the Wii emulator. There are tools for almost everything now. Porting, collection, map editing, animations, etc. So people make many things possible. To install mods, you can use the DBZ Studio. Look in the archives and you can install a mod that is already available from somewhere. To play the game, you have several options. You can go the way of downloading the PS2 emulator, or download a Wii emulator, and then give it your all. Feel free to check out several tutorials on this process, as there are likely different ways of doing this, but as you can see from above, the process has made it possible to share and mix a variety of mods and additions into the game's code, which has created this community of creators. However, why is modding for a nearly 2-decade game still fun? The great modding community are plentiful because of the arrival of Dragon Ball Super mods that are still being made for the game, and with more sagas of the series continuing. Whether it's the continual longevity of the series that keeps fresh mods cropping up, or the simple fact that these creators love seeing their creations come to life, Budokai Tenkaichi 3 has a community of modders and YouTubers who showcase their talents to the rest of the world. Not to mention that as much as the need for a sequel is practically a hopeless dream at this point, it's great to know that fans would rather build their own rather than wait. As one of the biggest multimedia entertainment properties out there, Dragon Ball Z and the world of video games are still evolving and undergoing several iterations. The last major Dragon Ball Z game to release was in 2020 with Dragon Ball Z Kakarot. As for the Tenkaichi fighting series, there was a remake or spiritual successor in 2009 known as Dragon Ball Raging Blast. Boasting high-quality graphics and similar fighting mechanics from the Tenkaichi series, Raging Blast and its sequel, Raging Blast 2, were met with mixed reviews and clearly not enough to support a third sequel. Fighting games for the series would eventually move towards several directions, such as an RPG fighter in the Dragon Ball Xenoverse series and the 2D-style fighting game Dragon Ball Z Fighters, which solidifies a more traditional competitive fighting scene in present day. Sure, there are more games out there, but the fans of Budokai Tenkaichi 3 live on and continue to play a game they still consider the best game of the series to date. If someone who has never played Tenkaichi tried it for the first time, I would say that it is the same sensations of the fights in the anime, in my perspective. I would say that the game is very faithful. The thing is, if you get bored of Tenkaichi 3, you can explore the options of mods. It is one of the most beloved games of everyone who played it in 2007, and with this pandemic, even more youths will continue to play this legendary game. Not to mention that this community continues to go further beyond in the world of Twitch streaming and YouTube channels dedicated to showing off a modder's latest creations. I'd also highly recommend checking out Zackland's live stream tournaments, where he plays in online tournaments with other fans around the world. Of course, if this fanbase couldn't be any more ambitious, Dragonball Z Budokai Tenkaichi 4, the unofficial collaborative sequel mod of Tenkaichi 3, had just recently been made widely available for players to download. The game includes all characters from Tenkaichi 3, improved UI designs, additional voice recordings, fresh animations, and even more characters, not to mention expanded story campaigns for the Dragon Ball Super series, original costumes, new maps, and so much more. A fantastic documentary by Metatrox speaks with several of the developers of the game, as well as explaining how the project came to be. I highly recommend it, and it will be placed on the link in the description below. For non-Spanish speakers, be sure to select closed captions and auto-translate to whichever language you prefer. If anything, the continuing dedication of this community only serves to keep the game from ever being forgotten. The sense of unity, sharing, and enjoyment that these fans continue to have for this game will live on. And since Dragon Ball Z is an ongoing series, expect more mods, more discoveries, and more importantly, more fans. The community keeps it afloat. It keeps the game alive and keeps it going. And things like BT4 are made by fans that before becoming modders, were also just players, all while the whole community keeps the game alive. I would like to thank all of the contributors for this month's documentary. I appreciate everyone's time and effort, and all my sources will be listed in the description below. Remember, they may have forgotten, but you did not. Thanks for watching.